Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports Soccer podcast. I'm Sandra and Lisa, NWSL lead writer for CBS Sports, joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host, Lisa Roman, NWSL analyst and broadcaster. On today's episode, we will be recapping Wednesday's NWSL matches, Kansas City versus Louisville and Portland versus Gotham FC. And we will also be previewing this weekend slate of NWSL matches. But a quick reminder that you can actually watch NWSL full game extended highlights at youtube.com/attacking3rd. Go check those out. Subscribe to our YouTube page so you don't miss a thing. Lisa, these games, we're about to get through it. How you doing today?
I'm good. Fun to watch these games on a Wednesday evening. I like the midweek matchups and then more this weekend. You can never get enough of it, honestly, Sandra. How are you?
I'm right there with you. We couldn't get enough of it, and we got a week where we had to do midweek matches ahead of some matches on the weekend. Had a little bit of a rainstorm here last night in Chicago, so after watching that late night game between Portland and Gotham, I got some good sleep in for sure.
After all your caffeine that you had to stay up for those games, you actually got some rest. I'm very impressed.
You got to balance things out. And sometimes the weather helps out. The rain came in real clutch for all that. But let's get into it for our listeners here. We've got two midweek games to go through. We've got, starting first, Kansas City NWSL versus Racing Louisville FC. I'm already giggling about it, Lisa, because I'm pretty sure we picked against Kansas City in this one. And what did they do? They got their second win at home. They defeat Racing Louisville FC 2-1. Good stuff here. We got a feature from Own Goal in this one. Own Goal's having a great summer all across the league, but 2-1 in favor of Kansas City NWSL. Things are maybe happening for them in this second half. They're still sitting in last place in the table, 10th place with 10 points, and there's a lot to maybe take a look into. What's going on the pitch for now, but in terms of momentum and trying to close out their second half of the season with something to build on with an eye ahead, I think this is something that they can look back on and hang their head on. What did you think of this game, Lisa?
I'm very happy for Kansas City. Of course, I like when the underdog scores goals and wins games with style. This Kansas City squad had style and they had class throughout this match. A few things that we talked about in the preview for this one is whether for Racing Louisville, if Katie Lund would be in goal or if Michelle Betos was between the pipes for Racing Louisville. And for Kansas City, AD Franch, she got the start with her new squad. So that was pretty exciting to see. And I mean, we talked about how this was such a great move for Kansas City to snatch up AD Franch, and to have someone like that on your defensive end and behind you as a leader and a veteran in this league is just so big for Kansas City. And she proved that. But this Kansas City squad, they were different in this matchup against Racing Louisville because they had so much pressure on Racing Louisville throughout the first half. And that's actually how they got their first goal. It ended up being an own goal against Racing Louisville, but that's because Kansas City had so much pressure on Racing Louisville's back line. And we'll get into it because Racing has another game this weekend, but this was their fourth game in 10 days or 12 days, something ridiculous. And they looked really tired.
Yeah, the calendar is getting crowded for sure.
They had heavy legs. They were put under a lot of pressure. Kansas City used the heavy legs of Racing to their advantage by putting them under so much pressure. And it showed because the passes weren't sharp. Mentally, they were a little bit tired. There was mistakes happening in defensive error for Racing Louisville that KC just really capitalized on. The own goal happening in the 18th minute. Kristen Hamilton, she played a great ball in behind. She is a player that had a fantastic game. This was her 100th NWSL regular season game. She ends up forcing the own goal. She had a beautiful cross in and Racing Louisville just couldn't defend well. Their shape and their body positioning was not well. They couldn't track back due to tired legs. And it ended up being a bad giveaway in the middle of the park for Louisville to capitalize for Kansas City to get this goal. And then Kansas City ended up going up 2-0 in the 40th minute. Kristen Hamilton, in her 100th NWSL regular season game, forces the own goal, and then she gets one in the back of the net herself. This came off high pressure. It was a breakaway play. Beautiful ball by Mace to do a slip pass into Hamilton, who just runs between Louisville's back line and slots it away. Nadia Nadim for Racing Louisville, she did have an opportunity or two, but couldn't put it away. Ultimately, Cece Kaiser gets one on the board along with Nadia Nadim. Ball in the back line for Casey really stopped running to follow through with Cece Kaiser. It was a little give and go between Kaiser and Nadia Nadim, and Ball was marking up Kaiser. Kaiser made a great run through, and Ball didn't stay with her. So Louisville did get on the board to end this one 2-1. Also, there's a red card given out at the end of this game to Sydney Miramontes. She got 2 yellows in the span of 5 minutes or something.
Tired. I'm gonna
tired legs.
I'm gonna put it on some of the fatigue. Quite honestly, you saw how it was affecting this team, and Louisville getting the goal late in the second half when they got it, maybe in another week where they don't have so many minutes on their legs, it could be a moment of shift in momentum during that game, and they can maybe try to push for an equalizer or maybe even a game-winning goal. But it just wasn't going to happen in this game. And you're so right in breaking down some of these goals and these, because some of the areas in this pitch were just wide open gaps. There was just a lot of, and I don't know what, maybe on Kansas City is just maybe just some of how they've been playing this year, or their lack of ability into playing. We haven't really seen this team play a full 90-minute game of what could be considered sophisticated soccer, I guess, right? And then you're going up against a team that is tired, just outright tired and playing. So there were moments of this game for sure where this was not the game that you look at and say you're going to get the prettiest soccer in NWSL in this one, but it worked in favor of Kansas City, and they walked away with this. Well, thankfully, this 2-1 win, because it looked for a second there like Louisville was going to make things interesting, but they just kind of didn't have the energy to make it happen in the end.
And Casey at home for this game, I just want to put this out there in the soccer world. Can they stop playing on a baseball diamond?
Oh, man.
Can we get rid of that? Can we move on to a different field for KC? It's a huge soccer city.
Yeah.
Kansas City, they got their second win at home, but come on, can we get them off of a baseball diamond maybe next year?
And these are things I think that all of these things are going to be looked at, which is why having this win for Kansas City, you got to have hopefully, I was hoping that we were both hoping that this team was eventually going to get a win, and now they've got 2 wins.
They got 2.
Now they got 2 wins, but these are the moments. These are the things, even within the draws that they've got. Those are the things that they can look back and take a look at individual performances, players that they want to continue building with, in light of having this sort of. It's almost like a bit of it almost feels like a very, very, very long preseason for this team. And anytime, this was a second meeting for these two clubs, and anytime they're both the 2 expansion sides for this league. And so anytime these 2 teams kind of go head to head, I'm kind of paying attention a little bit closer just to see where they are. And you're sort of seeing where a team like Louisville is, and they kind of have even though they're sitting where they're sitting in the standings, which is at number 9, they have a certain energy about them. We're starting to see small parts of their team culture shine through, whether it's on the pitch or off the pitch. And we're not necessarily seeing that with Kansas City yet. But having these wins, making the trade like they trade for players like Mace and Hamilton, who are clearly already getting acclimated to the club and the scenery and the setting, and making a move for somebody like Adriana French, those are already signals to me that this team is trying to look ahead a little bit, and maybe in another expansion year they can look a little bit different, and that's going to include the personnel that they have on the pitch. That's going to include the facility that they possibly play in. We'll see, but for now, Congrats to Kansas City on getting their second home win of the year. We've got a final one to get through for midweek action, Lisa. We've got Portland Thorns FC versus Gotham FC. It was NWSL action after darking. I got to admit, watching this game, maybe kind of a little bit of the calmer of the late night games that we've had in this 2021 season. A 2-1 win for Portland Thorns, first place against fifth place. There was a lot going on in this game really early on. A lot of hype about the Olympians making their return to their markets and now to the pitch. Back in NWSL regular season action, we got to see Lindsay Horan, Crystal Dunn, Christine Sinclair make their NWSL return. And we got to see Carly Lloyd return to Providence Park, and she tends to have herself some games there in front of the big crowds. So this one we were hyped about, and this one we had circled on for sure. And it did not take long, Lisa, for Portland to just get these Olympians to just sort of get reacclimated with their team. There's a lot of narrative around there, and this, I'm including ourselves in this, in which the return of Olympians, we talk about how it might take time for players to sort of, integrate back into systems, find that cohesion and connection with their teammates after coming off of a very intense tournament like they all went through over in the Tokyo Games. But we're watching this Portland Thorns team, and it literally took them like 15 minutes to get it all together and figure things out. What a match for them, honestly. What were some of your takeaways, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, the 15 minutes it took for them to get into a rhythm with each other, which honestly is not even as long as it takes some teams who have been playing together all season to get into a rhythm in a game. But one thing that stood out to me, one player, which I'm sure many people watching this Portland match saw as well, Sophia Smith. Holy cow, this girl. So taking a look at the Olympics and her time over the last few months and what she's been through and everything that she's gone through, she was a player that was in the Olympic pool, part of the talk of potentially going to the Olympics as an alternate, as a full-time squad member, didn't make the cut. She wasn't there, and that was heartbreaking for her as a player. But looking back on it, the consistency that she's been able to have staying with Portland, staying under Mark Parsons, staying with her teammates, staying in a consistent NWSL regular season schedule and not going to the Olympics has allowed her more consistent playing time, because if she were to go to the Olympics, she probably wouldn't have seen that many minutes. So she's had more consistent minutes on the field with players and with coaches, and that has given her the confidence to play lights out. And that's what we saw from her. She was all over the pitch, doing a lot of the work. I mean, Christine Sinclair and her working together up top, so good. So good. They're very different styles of player. Christine Sinclair is a little bit more slow and relaxed on the ball, and she can occupy the space. And Sophia Smith just darting around up top, which caused so much confusion for Gotham's back line. And Gotham's back line has seen a lot of that this year, and they've been able to handle that, but they couldn't. Gotham started in a 3-back, which also made it easier for Christine Sinclair and Sophia Smith to weave in and out of them and lose their defenders. But Sophia Smith, man, she is good. She ended up getting goals in this game, being huge. She got the first goal in about the 29th minute at the half-hour mark for Portland Thorns. There was another goal shot by Christine Sinclair that went off of Smith's head as she's like laying on the goal line.
It was just minutes later. It was
later.
It was literally like 2 minutes after she had got the opening goal. It just
and Smith caused that. She caused that sequence of events to happen. It was a slip ball,
and it went, and she connected, but it was just ruled offside. It was unbelievable, but at the same time absolutely believable, just because that's who she's been for this team over the course of really the year. I mean, she started off her regular season with a couple goals against in that opening game in Chicago, and she's just sort of continued her development in this season, this second year with the Thorns. And listening to a little bit of the media availability with Mark Parsons, and he kind of chalked up the fact that having somebody like Sinclair playing kind of in the 9 role, playing off of Smith, was kind of just out of necessity because of the forward pool kind of picking up the knocks that they've picked up. Simone Charlie coming out with an injury during those WICC games, which could have loomed large for maybe another team, but this is the Thorns that we're talking about. But she came out with an injury while Morgan Weaver is kind of working her way back to form from an injury of her own. So no one is actually super like 70 to 90-minute fit right now, I guess, in terms of the top line. But it was perfect timing to have somebody like Sinclair make her return. And you saw this team. It didn't take them long to start exposing that space between Gotham's back three. But once they did and they started connecting, it was over. You could see like as soon as it was like blood in the water for this team.
Yeah. And they made it look so easy too. And then ended up with penalty kick, drawing a penalty kick, which Estelle Johnson, she does not commit fouls in the back line for Gotham. She's been a pretty solid rock. She's a very by the book defender. But Sophia Smith, another name drop for her, drawing this penalty kick, drawing the foul from Estelle Johnson, and Sinclair just burying this penalty kick at 2-0 for Portland to go up. But then Carly Lloyd, she doesn't really like to be down.
No.
She does not like to be losing. No.
Credit to Gotham. This was not like we're respectfully talking about the Thorns and the performance that they put together because they've been on a ridiculous streak in the league, but Gotham didn't necessarily look like a poor team in this match. And credit to Freya Coombe. She made those tactical adjustments right at the half. We saw them ditch that 3-back, make some substitutions. They brought on Amani Dorsey for Erica Skrosky, who was having a rough game out there defensively. She got picked off from Sophia Smith for that opening goal, and Estelle Johnson had to make the foul in the box on Smith just because of a miscue by Skrosky. So her night ended early, came out in the half. They brought Dorsey on, and we saw Gotham really start to play up through their midfield, right, which is bread and butter for Carly Lloyd, who her movement on and off the ball was very, very good. And we saw that that's what ended up leading to this goal for Gotham. And she just was kind of, again, we're talking about blood in the water, a little bit of a shark herself, playing movement off of Mangus a little bit to kind of create her space and get this goal. But again, another late goal happened in the 78th minute. It took a little while to get there. And unfortunately, the team just sort of ran out of time, quite frankly, to try and make another push, because against a team like Portland, who have been doing what they've been doing, even though they were staying organized to close out the game, they were still also trying to find an extra goal of their own. So it's very impressive to watch a team, like a very offensive minded team like the Thorns, somehow be able to play defense through their offense. It's quite impressive.
It is very impressive. And the thing with Gotham and head coach Freya Coombe switching to this 3-back, which we saw a few weeks ago, she's been trying it out. She wants to see it. The thing that has worked so well for Gotham throughout this season is having their wide players, specifically Caprice Didasco, who's the outside right back, push up the flank and send crosses in. So in theory, it makes sense to play a 3-back with 5 in the midfield, pushing Didasco into an outside midfield position. That way she doesn't have to track back as much, and she's already up the field. So when she gets the ball, the crosses are easier and it's less running for her. But it doesn't always work out. Sometimes if it's not broke, don't fix it. So the 4-back is working for Gotham. Stick with it for Freya. I mean, she has one more game left this weekend, but I mean, at this point, like, stop changing it up. You tried it, didn't really work out. And especially against a Portland Thorns team that has just such an attacking threat. I don't know. We'll see what happens moving forward with Gotham, but I mean, great win for Portland.
It's ambitious on the part of Gotham, but you just got to consider the personnel that they don't have available to be playing that, that 3-back as well. No Paige Monahan, she's been out for some time. No Mitch Purse for this one. So you got to consider all those things, and it didn't work out the same way that they had planned. But big win for Portland. They are now on an 8-game undefeated streak in the league. They sit atop of the standings, number 1, with a little bit of a cushion. I believe it's 5 points between them and second place North Carolina Courage. But another big win for them, another statement win as far as I'm concerned. Doesn't matter who's on the pitch. Sophia Smith alluding to such in her post-game comments, just saying it doesn't matter who she's playing with out there. It could it could be whomever, and she just feels really lucky that they have the team that they have this year. So another quick turnaround. We're talking about a lot of games. Portland has another one coming up this weekend. We're going to get into all of this weekend's games. We're going to come back after a quick break. You know, we always like our hydration breaks here. 5 games on the weekend. We'll be back with our picks and our games to watch. Lisa, cheers. We've got games to preview this weekend, and only one is on Saturday, and 4 games are on Sunday.
I hope it rains all day Sunday in Philly. That way I can just stay inside and not feel guilty about not being in the sunshine, because I'm just going to be on my couch watching these games.
Clear your schedules, folks. It's happening. Saturday, we've got one game to go through. It is Chicago Red Stars versus Kansas City NWSL. Chicago back at home after a lengthy road trip of their own that consisted of NWSL regular season action and Women's Cup action as well. Taking on Kansas City NWSL, who are coming off of a win themselves. So a little bit of a different team coming into Chicago. This is going to be their second meeting of the regular season. Chicago taking that first match on the road against Kansas City earlier this year. But Chicago also getting back their Olympians. Well, some of them. They're getting back Casey Kruger, Tierna Davidson. They made appearances over the Women's Cup tournament. Listen, they are still out with a knee injury and an injury update for Julie Ertz out of Chicago via U.S. Soccer is that Julie Ertz is actually dealing with a hamstring injury and a lower back issue as well. So she is going to be week to week. That was the update they got this week. They're looking for an additional update next week. She's on a rehab assignment. So we'll see what happens. This team, though, has been navigating, quite frankly, their 2021 without their team captain in Julie Ertz. So this isn't necessarily news to them, though it might be an updated news for those who follow the game. But in terms of these two teams going head to head on Saturday, Lisa, who are you looking at? Who are you picking and why?
Well, Kansas City coming off their Wednesday match, now quick turnaround on Saturday, just 2 days in between. Now they are coming off of a win. Great job, KC. However, this is their third game in 8 days. They're traveling to Chicago, so Chicago will be at home at SeatGeek Stadium. Chicago now with their Olympians back, like you mentioned, Sandra, with Casey Kruger, Tierna Davidson. That adds some star power for them, especially in the back line, which is an area that they've honestly been lacking. Chicago's been in a bit of a rut over the last few weeks. They lost their last game technically to PSG, not an NWSL regular season game, but they lost to PSG. They tied their last NWSL game to Louisville, ultimately losing that one in penalty kicks. They lost to North Carolina. They lost to Orlando. They haven't won a game since August 1st. Versus Washington. That's a bit of a rut for Chicago. Now with some of these stars back and maybe even, I don't know if Julie Ertz is hanging around the training facility, if she's getting her treatment in Chicago, but I think to have the Olympians back, even just in training, even just in the locker room, even just involved in the conversation around the games that are coming up in the regular season for Chicago, helps these Chicago players. Watt has been coming alive in the second half of games. It's taking her a little bit in gameplay to find her rhythm and progress throughout the game as it goes on. Can she get started earlier in the match? Can her and Malpew link up, start a game really strong, get on the front foot? I think if Chicago can score first in the first 15 minutes of this match against Kansas City, it will put them in a better position to win this one. Now, Kansas City, they are going to put up a really, really big fight, especially defensively. They now have AD Franch in goal. They have Katie Bowen, who's done a tremendous job slotting into that number 6 defensive midfield position. This game, I am so intrigued to watch it. I think will be really, really tight. I think Chicago could get back on their winning streak, though, with this game. Getting it past France is going to be really tough, but I see Chicago winning this narrowly, 1-0, narrowly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think having the quick turnarounds for Kansas City might come into to play a role a little bit. Chicago will have had a little bit of rest for themselves. They're also at home, so it's a little bit of a different boost for that. And they're viewing this as their welcome home game for their Olympians. So there's a lot of energy around that at the moment. And the team has sort of tasked themselves with viewing the regular season as a marathon, which you should because it's a long season, and they're entering this portion of the schedule that they're referring to as like the post-Olympic push for the playoffs, quite frankly. And they're on the outside looking in at the moment, level on points with 21 points with two other clubs. But those head-to-heads, those goal differentials, those tiebreakers are starting to come into play. So I would imagine that they're looking at this particular match and viewing this as an absolute win for them, that they have to come out with points in this game, because moving forward with their remaining matches, every point is really going to count in terms of how the playoffs sort of shake out. So we'll see what happens. I do think this one could be won by Chicago. I also agree that it could possibly be a narrow one, because quite frankly, both of these teams, as they're meeting for the second time this year, are not really in the same positions where they were when they met previously. Chicago was still trying to figure things out, generate their offense and their attack, and Kansas City was struggling, and they're struggling still, but in a different way, where they're kind of coming out and playing some different types of soccer and getting some different types of results in their second half of the season. So I'm going to go for Chicago with this one, but I think a lot of it's going to have to do with how Mel Pugh comes out and plays, and who really is there to support her, quite frankly, because when Mel Pugh actually has support or channels that she can find and reach out to and options, that bodes well for Chicago. So we'll see what happens there. Sunday. I don't even like. Do we
Sunday
just
fun day, Sandra? It's Sunday.
do we just
fun
dive
day.
in? Do we just let's just dive in? 4 matches, 8 teams. Washington Spirit versus North Carolina Courage. I'm intrigued by this game, Lisa. We've got teams that are also welcoming back Olympians, U.S. Women's National Team Olympians, teams that are coming off impressive games themselves. Obviously, North Carolina having a big 4-0 win against the Courage, and then the Spirit kind of having really what felt like a really must win. They needed that for a number of reasons, whether it was in the standings and perhaps team morale as well. Looking at this one, Spirit are hosting. Do you think that's going to play any advantage in this one at all? Are you seeing this go one way or the other? Is this got more of like a draw or a tie type of feelings for you, Lisa? Who are you picking and why?
These are good questions, Sandra. You come with the good questions. Remember, North Carolina is number 2 in the standings. They're coming off a huge win over Kansas City, 4-0. They've been unbeaten in their last 5 games, 2 ties, 3 wins. They have a lot of momentum going their way. However, last game, Havana Salone, she got a red card, so she is out for this match versus Washington, which opens up a spot in the midfield. I could see Kari Recaro slotting in there a little bit more defensive, or Meredith Speck slotting into that midfield box. But when you look at this Courage front line and their attacking players that they have in Lynn Williams, Jess McDonald, Amy Rodriguez, those 3 are a threat, with Dabinia sitting in behind. I mean, amazing. Denise O'Sullivan as well in that midfield. I love watching this team now, because they have a player like Amy Rodriguez that's finding her seams, and Lynn Williams is back. And between McDonald, Williams, and Amy Rodriguez, they all provide a different look at goal, something that is different from their counterparts up there with them. So their threat is so big and so huge. Washington, though, they're coming off a big win over Orlando. Tori Huster has been playing tremendously well in the midfield for Washington Spirit. I think Aubrey Bledsoe in goalkeeper for Washington Spirit, is going to have a tall task to stop shots from Williams and Rodriguez and McDonald. I think she's going to be tested and put under a lot of pressure. I do think it'll be tight, but I think we're going to see some goals in this one. I'm hoping for 3 goals, 2 of them for North Carolina, because this front line and this attacking combination of the midfield, Dabinia and Williams, Lynn, they can score goals. So I'm going to go 2 for North Carolina, but Washington will get on the board, 2-1. What do you think?
I'm going Spirit with this one, Lisa. I don't know. There's something about when these two teams. I mean, when they last met, it was at Audi Field. There was something. It was like the game that really sort of kicked off a very strong streak for Washington Spirit, and they're not going to have some key midfielders in the Courage side of things. That includes somebody like Sam Mewis, who is officially out for the foreseeable future, and after going through arthroscopic knee surgery, she had a scope done on the knee, so that's major. She's not going to be in commission for this team, but they do still have somebody like a Dabinia in that midfield, somebody like a Denise O'Sullivan, Meredith Speck, who has been putting together some pretty consistent starts and performances for this North Carolina side. But you mentioned Tori Huster, and in that same breath, we have to talk about Andy Sullivan. So I do think it's going to come down to the midfield in this game for both of these teams. And while Lynn Williams and Jess McDonald are a huge threat in the attack, you've got an Ashley Sanchez, an Ashley Hatch, a Trinity Rodman. I think this could be, it feels appropriate that this is the game to kick off the games on Sunday. It almost feels like this is going to be the one that could be a lot of fun. And I thought it was a great match at Audi Field the last time these two teams made. And I think it could be another one this time, but I'm going to go the way of the Spirit for this one. I think it'll be narrow, but they're going to pull it out.
What's the score? You have to give me some numbers.
I'm gonna say it's narrow. I'm gonna say it's 2-1 as well. I think it's gonna be 3 goals. I think you can't stop them all from
So
North
we
Carolina.
agree on the 3 goals, but just not who's gonna
Just
score
not
them.
who's gonna get it. I think we're gonna
I'll
we're gonna
see you on Monday.
We're gonna see what happens. Watch, it's gonna be a tie. We just jinxed it. It's gonna be a draw. Let's look ahead. The next one coming up is Gotham FC versus Orlando Pride. We got two teams looking to get back in the win column. Lisa, who's standing out in this match and why? We've got Gotham hosting. Is that gonna, provide the added oomph for them? It's gonna be head coach Freya Coombs' last game with this team before they bid her adieu off to Angel City FC. Who's taking the win or not on this day?
This will be a very, very tight game. It's a quick turnaround for Gotham. They just lost to Portland on Wednesday, and they took a long time to get into that Portland game. We talked about it at the start of this episode. Will Margaret Purse be back? Most likely not. She's still injured, but you never know. Could see her pop in there. Orlando has split their last 3 games. They lost to Washington. They tied with Portland. And at the beginning of August, they beat Chicago 2-0. Yeah. So they're rough. They're going through a rough patch right now, but the goal scoring opportunities against a tired Gotham team are going to be there for Orlando. However, I think with Carly Lloyd and the power that Gotham has defensively, they had some breakdowns in that Portland match. I think that it'll be tighter. I think that defensively, they're going to screw their heads on a little sharper and then be mentally more tuned into this matchup against Orlando. I'm going with a draw.
Okay, this is the one that screams draw. I don't blame you. I've gone back and forth a lot on this one too, Lisa. I'm not too sure if someone's going to come out a winner in this match, but I will say this: they're going to play like they want there to be a winner, because we're getting to this part of the season. We've got a bunch of teams that are just clustered in the middle of these standings, and these are 2 of them. 21 points, head-to-head tiebreakers are going to come into play. Goal differentials are absolutely going to come into play. These are the games that you're starting to look at in this final third of the regular season, where you're like, these are actually 6-point games. They're not just 3-point games. You got to swing them the way you can swing them. And these are the type of big games where you start to see if those big-time players are going to come out with those big-time games. So yes, we need to be keeping an eye on somebody like Carly Lloyd, but we also need to be keeping an eye on somebody like Sydney Leroux, who has been phenomenal for this Orlando Pride team this entire season. And we'll see what happens and comes out of this game. I kind of want to give it to Orlando in this one, just because they've got a little bit of a longer, lack of wins going on. They're winless, I think, in their last 3, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And Gotham is coming off of a 2-game skid. So I'm going to give it to Orlando. I think the dog that's been, beaten down a little bit more might have a little bit more bite coming into this one. So we'll see. I won't be surprised if maybe it comes down to a goalkeeper battle either. Yes. If we're seeing something come down to how Kaylin Sheridan or Ashton Heron play in their net these games. So we'll see. I think it could be narrow if it does come down to a win or a loss, but I think I might give that edge to Orlando if it does come
And
down.
both teams, like you said, they need this win. This is a must-win game for both of these squads, which is why I think it's going to be a draw.
I know we were hyping up this first game with the Spirit and the Courage, but this is another one. This is another one that just sort of feels like if it comes out with whichever team happens to get it, or if they do come out with a win, it could sort of feel like it's a definitive, like season defining type of win, and it can really maybe give them a trajectory to close out the regular season. So we'll see. You got to draw. I'm actually leaning towards Orlando a little bit. So we'll see what happens in this one. We've got OL Reign versus Portland. It just keeps getting better, Lisa. The game just keeps getting better. We've got the Pacific Northwest rivals. The Cascadian rivalry is back. This time, OL Reign will be hosting Portland Thorns FC. We've got two teams that are going into this game in pretty decent form. Lisa, who are you picking in this one and why?
That's such a deep question, Sandra. Let me explain myself first before I give it all away, give away all the answers. We've talked about the narrative that including internationals back into squads in regular season play, and we saw it with Portland and how they had no trouble doing that. However, OL Reign, I think that it's going to be a steeper hill to climb, incorporating their internationals back. There's a bit of an adjustment period for players coming back for OL Reign. Megan Rapinoe, Quinn, they need a little bit of space. They need some time to get back into the rhythm of things, because that's a lot of star power that was missing from OL Reign, that other players had to pick up the slack and take on different roles. Le Sommer still out for the foreseeable future for OL Reign, which does stop some of the magic and the creation in the midfield for OL Reign. Now they do have Rapinoe and Fishlock that can do a lot of damage, but Portland, this is a tight turnaround for them. There's 4 teams, of course, that played Wednesday night that will then have to play. This is at least on Sunday, but they're sitting at number 1. They have 32 points in the standings. They're ahead of the number 2 spot, North Carolina, by 5 points. This gap has been consistent for the Portland Thorns over the last few weeks, but there's still a gap. They cannot be beaten and they cannot be taken off the number 1 spot in one weekend. I don't foresee a drop in consistency from Portland. In back-to-back weeks, I don't see a drop in consistency where they're shoved off of that number 1 spot. They're undefeated in their last 9 NWSL games. And Sophia Smith, she is on something right now, on something beautiful. I want whatever she is drinking. I want to drink that Kool-Aid. This game, I want it to be tight and I want it to be good, but I just see Portland coming out on top. They're too consistent and they're too good right now, and they don't have a big head about it. I see Portland coming out on top.
Portland is the team to beat this year. Lisa, you are correct. And I am disagreeing and saying that Oregon is going to be the team to do it. They're going to be the team to do it. They had an impressive win against them early in the season. Again, these are 2 teams that are not in the same positions that they were when they first met this regular season. I think that they're better. They're both now in the part of the season where they are better. Yes, Portland has been on a ridiculous, impressive streak right now. And I think that OL Reign is going to be motivated by that, to sort of have their visiting long-standing rivals come on into their home turf and want to make a bit of a statement win of their own. It's one thing to be getting results and ensuring that you're keeping pace with the playoff table. But while we're talking about like a game like Gotham and Orlando that can maybe have, season implicating type of results, I think this could be one of those for the Reign as well, quite frankly. It could be a scenario in which the strongest team in the league always sort of has their kryptonite in some sense. And we've seen that in prior seasons with somebody like a North Carolina Courage, who had always had struggles against the Red Stars during the regular season, but had big payoffs in the playoffs. And this could, I think, ring true this year for OL Reign and Portland Thorns. And I think OL Reign are going to take this one. I don't know if it'll be a huge high-scoring match. I think we've got a little bit of a fatigued Thorns side, although they've been impressive as they have been, against an OL Reign side that can either beat you in big goals and in big ways, or they can kind of squeak one by you. So I think it'll be maybe a 2-1 type of scoreline, but I think it'll go away of OL Reign.
Do you have Rapinoe scoring a goal?
I definitely don't have her scoring 2 penalty kicks. I'll say that. I'll say that.
I
But
don't
I
think
think
anyone could have predicted that.
no, I don't think anybody could have predicted that, ourselves included. But I do think that the goals come at least from one type of U.S. Olympian, whether it's a Rose Lavelle or a Megan Rapinoe. So it might come from one of them. But I won't be surprised if Balser gets involved in the mix, or seeing somebody like Sofia Huerta getting some action behind the ball as well. So this is another exciting one.
I just like to put you on the spot, Sandra. That's it. I just like to
Oh,
have
I
fun with
embrace
you.
it. I welcome it. It's like a friend just checking in. I welcome it. It feels delightful. We got a last one, Lisa. We've got Houston Dash against Racing Louisville FC. We talked a little bit about this Louisville side and their game in the midweek action. Quick turnaround for them on the road to Houston. Not an easy place to play, just in terms of quite literally the heat and the weather and the elements that take place there. Houston, another team on the outside looking in, trying to make their way back into these playoff standings in a little bit more of a secure sense. And this could be one of those games where they're looking at their opposition coming in and maybe saying, we have got to take advantage of this opportunity in front of us. This is a team on short rest, quick turnaround, a lot of minutes coming into our house. We got to take this one. I think I might be leaning for Houston Dash in this one, Lisa. Who are you picking and why?
I'm leaning towards Houston Dash.
Alrighty.
They're number 8 in the standings, 18 points. They're just 2 ahead of Louisville, just 2 points ahead, and they're only 3 points behind the tied Chicago, Orlando, and Gotham. Of course, it'll all shake out by the time this game kicks off, but for Houston, this is a must-win game. If they're right on the cusp of the playoff line in the standings. They need this win. And Louisville, this is the last game of their really tight stretch. 5 games in 15 days. They were tired on Wednesday versus Kansas City. I don't know how they're going to get more energy for this Houston matchup on Sunday evening, but I think Houston takes this one, whether it's just by sheer force and will and desire to win. I think that could honestly be it. I don't foresee this being a very pretty game. I don't. With the tired legs from Louisville and Houston just not being able to find good rhythm and consistency and connection amongst their players, it's probably going to be a sloppy game, but Houston will come out on top.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. You know, Houston came out of this WICC tournament on the losing sides of both their matches, but coming out on the front foot, really trying to make an effort to make statements and try to press the issue and force a result in their favor, but just didn't work out that way. Chatting a little bit over that time while I was out there in Portland with somebody like Rachel Daly and post-game scenarios, just you could sense some of the frustration, but at the same time the optimism of needing to work a little bit stronger together, a little bit harder with each other to ensure those results come through, especially when they are a team that has struck first to get a lead and then kind of see that slip away. So I'm eager to see how they look back in NWSL regular season action. I'm curious to see if head coach James Clarkson will continue with some of the different looks that we saw during that WICC tournament. I mean, we started to see Jasmine Spencer at the outside back position alongside Jamila Fields on the opposite flank. I'm curious to see if that continues with his team moving forward in light of the Olympians returning, having somebody like Rachel Daly back, or somebody like Nichelle Prince, or somebody like a Christy Mewis as options for the starting 11. What does that back line look like moving forward for this Houston Dash side? So I'm excited for it. I think they want, we're talking about statement games. I think Houston is going to want one of their own to really sort of push this final third of the season into gear for them. And I think this could possibly be it, but we'll see. I'm not too sure we're going to get a blowout, but I think we could get a win, and I think we could go Houston's way. But that's it. That's wrapping up all of the NWSL previewing for this weekend. I'm excited to watch all of these games. There is no one game I think that stands out over the other. I think they're all going to be good ones. They all could be season defining in some sense, but massively, massively, massively exciting. Really quick for the standings for everyone, if you're paying attention, we've got Portland Thorns in first place with 32 points, North Carolina Courage in second place with 27, and we've got a whole narrow, crowded field, 22 points in third place, Washington Spirit, 22 points in fourth place, Oil Reign. Fifth place and sixth place, Gotham and Orlando Pride, respectively, with 21 points. And outside of the playoff table, we've got Chicago Red Stars in seventh with 21 points, Houston Dash with 18, Racing Louisville with 16, and Kansas City NWSL with 10 points. Keep an eye on it, folks. It's going to change again this weekend. I want to thank you all for listening. A quick reminder to follow us all on Twitter at Attacking Third. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to your podcast. Please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you leave it with a question, we will answer it. We're also available as videos. Subscribe to us on YouTube for episodes with extended NWSL highlights. Visit youtube.com/Attacking Third. And we will be back Monday for an NWSL weekend recap and see who got their game predictions correct between the two of us. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.